Greetings and welcome to another Stompy 51 miniature adventure. This week we're going to have a look at the Crooked Dice Giant, which I picked up secondhand from the LED Adventure Forum. And if you're watching this kind of video, you should be on the LED Adventure Forum, particularly on its Bazaar of Obscurities, swapping and selling stuff with the Plum. It's sculpted by John Pickford, who frankly is a little bit of a hidden gem because I'd never really heard of him, although I recognise he's sculpted for a variety of small outfits who do kind of Oldhammer, early 1990s style metal miniatures. And so what have we got here? Oh, ignore all the thumping in the background, by the way. Can't really help that. Anyway, what do we have here? We've got a lovely torso with a kind of shirt sewn together from various bits, a theme in keeping since the earliest, at least, of Games Workshop giants. He's obviously killed some kind of dragon just to show that he is absolutely nails, and this provides him with a little bit of torso protection, a little bit of a flak jacket. There are 3 heads. There's a long one with the beard. That one, which I don't have, because I actually bought this off someone on the LED Adventure Forum. And we agreed that they would sell this one to someone else, because who needs 3 heads for one model? Then there's this weird kind of pan head, and I've never gone for the kind of chaos giant head. I don't know what other people think. I always, if you're going to go for a giant, as far as I'm concerned, they're a giant humanoid. Otherwise, if you want a giant elfy thing with pointed ears, and you can get that. So I will be swapping this on the LED Adventure Forum. I will be going for this kind of slightly pensive head from a fellow with loads of piercings, someone you might have bumped into in the 80s in a nightclub in Soho, probably as a bouncer. He looks like a bouncer, doesn't he? What do they call them in the States? A doorman? I don't know. Anyway, so that head is going to go over there. Or actually, does he look a bit more like a more determined version of Hoggle from Labyrinth, that film from the 80s? I think I might have to use a bit of green stuff. Doesn't seem to... I'm not sure exactly how it goes. These are his legs. I'm not sure, but I mean, this looks like some kind of bronze work of art, bronze statue, and I'm not too sure about the quality of this bit, but I don't think it really matters because people will be looking, unless they're very odd, they will not be looking at his bottom and trousers, they will be looking at this bit. Hello there, darling. And then there's this base, which I'm not going to use. I'm going to cut these off because I want to use this fellow for Kings of War, and that means he needs a 75mm base, and annoyingly, this is a little bit bigger. I mean, I could, I could just use it. No, it doesn't look right. So I'm going to have to saw these off outside, I suspect. He's got a hand, an arm, oops, a nice fit. And then what's the other arm like? The other arm, no, that doesn't go up like that. It goes down like that. And I think this goes forward. Now I'm not sure about the fitting here. I'm hoping that if I cut this down, it will all strangely just go beautifully. And I think this is what liquid green stuff was made for, albeit whenever I use liquid green stuff, I think you've got to layer it up, but it never really looks much as if I've actually used it. So a few words about assembly. I mean, it went together very nicely. I mean, I had to shave these little balls under the feet, not the balls of the feet, but there were these 2 little kind of balls underneath, designed to kind of plonk him into his base, the one that came from Crooked Dice. And as you can see, it did make an unholy mess. And then I just plonked on the torso onto the legs, and they fitted in. That fitted in very nicely, as you can see. I didn't do any filling or anything. That's the biggest gap, and there's no crime in that one. Then I put in the arm. The arm basically again went in beautifully and nicely. I just put a bit of this very dried out liquid green stuff, which has been sitting around for years. I thought I'd get some use out of it. Mixed in a bit of water and filled in the gap. I mean, it doesn't look brilliant. I'm not an expert green stuffer, but you know, it was all right. I put the head on. Oh, it's got some little teeth. Nothing wrong with looking slightly simian, I guess. With very big ears. And the bald head is a bit of a feature as well. Where he got all these earrings from, I don't know. I mean, they would have had to have been made specifically for him. And the right arm was another separate arm. The hand was separate, and I've tried to kind of green stuff it a little bit with that dried up liquid green stuff. I mean, it's not perfect. I didn't know how to make it perfect. I mean, the ball of the hand didn't fit in, I think because the recess wasn't deep enough, and I didn't know how to hollow it out, so I just cut down the ball. But, you know, it still fits beautifully. He's got a giant... well, not a giant, I suppose it's a huge branch, although it must be part of a pretty humongous tree, filled in with some kind of nasty metallic accoutrement, a little upgrade, so that, you know, I suppose you can jab as well as thump. Who doesn't need to jab as well as thump? I mean, he does scream out, Oldhammer, and there's nothing wrong with that. He came on the subject of accoutrements with a number, but I couldn't really tell how they kind of hooked in here, because I think that he was originally a metal sculpt. And indeed, as someone on Lead Adventure Forum pointed out, a very heavy one. And with the resin sculpt, I don't think these things are hollow, and I couldn't work out how to make them hollow. So I just basically sliced off the top of the various accoutrements and sort of just stuck them in the hope that no one will interrogate that too fully when it comes to a game. So I suppose he walks around with a bit of beer, a few little additional foodstuffs. There were two little piggies, I suppose, which hang down here, but I just thought they looked a bit too cartoonish. And then he's got some kind of little idol he's pillaged. It looks very Hrolor, or whatever his name was from Game of Thrones, as you imagine it to be, some kind of red god. And of course, a bit more extra treasure, because whichever dragon got slayed, he just took the treasure. And I suppose what I'll do is I'll paint this, I mean, either red or green. I mean, red would be more of an event, I suppose. Shirt, I mean, I might keep this simple. I mean, the skin I'll paint properly, you know, with layering and washing and all that. Probably eyebrows, or probably maybe grey, because, you know, these guys are old, and that will be grey, his sort of pate. I might just use one of the Games Workshop contrast paints, just put white and dry brush it, and then dark brown for the kind of thread. And then maybe this will be a kind of United Colours of Benetton approach, the trousers all sewn together from bits and bobs. One of the more kind of little interesting accoutrements is that sort of little knife for him to kind of eat with a bit of a wolf pelt sheath for it, and some kind of Empire little sun shield as a bit of decoration. And the reason I suppose that's special is because it's sat in a box for the better part of what is probably, well, since the late 80s, so for 35 years or so. It's sat in a box waiting for its moment, and its moment is with Mr. Giant over here. And the person it came from is him, the Orc and Goblin giant. Oh, that thing's always wobbling. And the first thing I look at remembering this, because I would tell you a lie if I actually bought this in the 80s. I bought the second hand in about 2010, 2008, something like that. And I painted it up for my Empire army. But obviously it was the Orc and Goblin giant. And obviously he had to be ginger. Do I make him ginger? I don't think it's really in keeping. He just had ginger eyebrows. So I don't think that would work. I mean, I've got another one of these powder monkeys from the Empire handgunner sprue, but again, I don't think he needs it. And I suppose I could put some of these, a bit more meat around here. But you know, I don't want to go overboard, because I do want to keep the painting simple. Because the joke is, I don't think it'll actually take very long to paint these large areas. The focus will be on the skin. And the last thing I need then is, having done all that, to find that I've got sort of, you know, a dozen little accoutrements that take ages to paint. And as you can see, the joke is, I foolishly, when Age of Sigmar came out, I thought, why don't I rebase this for Age of Sigmar? A game which I barely played because it's such a headache. Oh well. When it came to Kings of War, he would be too small anyway, because giants have to be titans. And I actually think I might have another one of these going. But again, I mean, it would make him look properly empire-y if I shoved that, something like that, just over there. Do I do it? Do I do it? Thoughts below. Because I mean, again, that's basically like taking another miniature and adding it to the list of what needs to be painted. Just to get him on the table. I had a bit of fun with some modelling clay, because I've got some liquid green stuff, not liquid green stuff, what's it called? Water effect. Which means, you know, if I can work out how to do it, maybe I'll get a straw, just blow on it or something, but once I put in the liquid resin, I'll blow on it to look like the earth is kind of pounding as he walks, which sounds very impressive. But when I last put in liquid resin and kind of blew on it to try and get waves for Mantic's Armada, it just kept resettling flat. So if anyone has any tips on how to make a kind of pebble tossed into a fountain effect with water effect resin, clear resin, do share. I mean, here's a shield, Beastman shield. I seem to have loads of them lying around, just to put him smack bang in the middle of the old world. And then kind of do this theme, which I adore, of mixing the new, even if they are Oldhammer new style, nouveau style, with the old. That's a very, very old tombstone. And where it's from, I'm not even sure. Maybe an old skeleton sprue, who knows. And that little fellow holding his head and hiding behind there, hoping that no one will notice him, is from, I'm pretty sure, from the old Orc and Goblin giant, which I do have, the newer one, but which I can't belt to get out of the garage. Him, I think, basically. And in terms of the new, the joke is, that actually is the Mantic Giant, which at £25 is really a tour de force in what modelers want, something that Mantic is pretty good at, because, you know, no one wants to pay, well, not many people want to pay £60 for a giant like that, even if he is, I mean, basically a work of art. He reminds me, I once went out with a girl who was a major in art, and she had this beautifully sculpted bald man sitting kind of crouching on his knees, but she made it out of clay, and in drying it had kind of gone whoop, and so he looked like he was crouching pontificating on the world with his head down, with his knees around his chest, and was about to take a tumble into a swimming pool. Ah, look at that. Look at the life in that. Some poor Bretonian retainer has died to be an eating knife. But as you can see, I'm not going to go to town. In the same way as I never went to town with this. I mean, this is not, everything on this is painted, but you know, I haven't really gone wild with it. You know, the skin's only got, I don't know, 4 or 5 layers at the face, largely otherwise 2 or 3. This was just dry brushed. That was just painted once, dry brushed, and a few highlights. Because, you know, these things don't always see too much life between all the various games. I don't think he's actually ever seen a game. I'll have to work that out. The joke is he could see a game before he does. Because I do know people who play Kings of War, whereas him, I foolishly based, is it a Mega Gargant for Age of Sigmar? I mean, there are people who play Age of Sigmar, but they're very good at it. It's a very complicated game. I set my little stall out with my little army, and they get smashed largely by the end of turn 2, but sometimes by the end of turn 1. Because for me, it's not my only game system, whereas the people who play it, it is largely their only game system, and they know it well. So all credit to them. Anyway, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much for watching to the end. Please leave any comments or thoughts you wish to. I love replying gently in the course of the week whilst stuck waiting for trains. Otherwise, see you around very soon. Cheers.